Look at almost any modern combat aircraft and you will notice the same thing. Whether it is an American F-35, a French Rafale, a Swedish Gripen, or a Russian Su-57, they are all some shade of gray. Not camouflage patterns, not sky blue, not black for nighttime operations. A color so uniform across so many different air forces, from so many different countries with completely different design philosophies, that it cannot possibly be a coincidence or a tradition. There has to be a reason. And when you start pulling at that thread, the answer turns out to involve optics, atmospheric physics, human vision research, and a lesson that military aviation learned the hard way over more than a century of aerial combat. The color of a fighter jet is not a cosmetic decision. It is an engineering one. In the earliest days of military aviation, during the First and Second World Wars, aircraft were painted with complex multicolored camouflage patterns designed to match whatever terrain they were expected to fly over. Forest greens and browns for European theaters. Desert tans for North Africa. Ocean blues and grays for maritime patrol. The logic was straightforward. Aircraft at that time spent a great deal of time at relatively low altitudes, and blending into the landscape below made them harder for ground-based observers and anti-aircraft gunners to track. As jet propulsion transformed military aviation in the years after the Second World War, that logic began to break down. Aircraft were now operating at dramatically higher altitudes and dramatically higher speeds. They spent far less time silhouetted against the ground and far more time silhouetted against the sky. The elaborate terrain-matching camouflage patterns that had served propeller-driven aircraft well became largely irrelevant when the primary background an aircraft appeared against was no longer fields and forests but atmosphere. During the Cold War, military researchers began studying systematically how aircraft appeared from different angles, at different altitudes, under different weather conditions, and across different times of day. What they found consistently was that neutral gray tones made aircraft harder to detect across a wider range of conditions than any single camouflage pattern could. The gradual shift toward gray that followed was not driven by tradition or aesthetics. It was driven by data. The most obvious alternative to gray seems simple enough. Paint the aircraft the same color as the sky. If the background is blue, make the aircraft blue, and it disappears. The problem is that the sky is almost never a single uniform color, and it almost never stays the same color for long. The apparent color of the sky changes constantly depending on altitude, cloud cover, the angle of sunlight, time of day, weather conditions, and the position of the observer relative to the aircraft. A bright blue aircraft that blends reasonably well against a clear sky at noon becomes conspicuous against an overcast layer of gray cloud. It stands out sharply during the muted light of dawn and dusk. It contrasts strongly when viewed from above against the horizon. Blue paint optimized for one set of conditions actively works against the aircraft in dozens of others. Gray does something more useful. Rather than matching any single background perfectly, it matches no background perfectly while performing adequately across almost all of them. At long distances, gray reflects light in a way that reduces visual contrast against hazy atmosphere, cloud layers, and the washed-out tones that dominate the sky at most operational altitudes. It performs reasonably when viewed from below against an overcast sky and reasonably when viewed from above against the Earth's horizon. In military aviation, where pilots cannot choose their environmental conditions, versatility is worth far more than perfection in a single scenario. Understanding why gray works requires understanding what camouflage is actually trying to accomplish. The goal is not invisibility. No paint scheme makes a fighter jet invisible. The goal is to delay detection, to buy the aircraft additional seconds before an enemy pilot or ground observer can positively identify it, determine its heading and distance, and make a targeting decision. In a high-speed engagement where closure rates between aircraft can exceed 1,500 kilometers per hour, a few extra seconds of detection delay can determine the outcome. Human vision at long range relies heavily on contrast. The eye does not detect objects directly so much as it detects the difference between an object and its background. An aircraft with sharp visual contrast against the sky behind it registers quickly and clearly. An aircraft that reduces that contrast forces the observer's visual system to work harder, extending the time required for recognition. Atmospheric haze naturally desaturates color over long distances. Bright colors that appear vivid up close fade and wash out as distance increases. Gray takes advantage of this effect more effectively than any saturated color because it is already close to the desaturated tones that atmospheric haze produces. An aircraft painted gray at distance looks like a slightly denser piece of haze, which is precisely what military researchers documented when they studied pilot identification times in controlled trials across multiple decades. Modern stealth aircraft like the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II rely primarily on geometry and specialized materials to reduce their radar cross-section. Their angular shapes are calculated to deflect radar energy away from the source rather than reflecting it back. Radar-absorbent materials embedded in their outer surfaces convert a portion of incoming radar energy into heat rather than reflecting it. Paint plays a supporting role in this system rather than a primary one. The specialized coatings applied to stealth aircraft protect the radar-absorbent materials underneath from moisture, temperature extremes, and physical wear. These coatings require specific chemical properties that constrain what colors are practically achievable. Gray fits those constraints naturally while simultaneously providing the visual camouflage benefit the aircraft needs. The alignment between what stealth material chemistry allows and what visual camouflage research recommends is not coincidental. It is one of the reasons gray became so deeply embedded in military aviation across every major air force simultaneously. What looks like a simple color choice is the accumulated output of a century of aerial combat experience, decades of vision research, atmospheric physics, and materials science all pointing in the same direction. Fighter jets are gray because the sky is not one color, because human vision relies on contrast, because atmospheric haze desaturates everything at range, and because the chemical requirements of modern stealth coatings happen to align with the visual requirements of high-altitude camouflage. The next time you watch a fighter jet climb away from an airfield and disappear into the haze, you are watching that logic work exactly as intended. Not invisible. Just difficult enough to find that by the time you are certain where it is already somewhere else.